everyone, Amanda here, and I found these two photos. One is of our first dog as a married couple. Actually, I got it just a couple months before we were married. A gentleman at work had rescued it from a home, and he was the single gentleman in a household of women, and they believe the dog was abused by a woman. So we tried her out and she worked fine for me. My parents agreed to allow me to bring her into their home because I was still living with them until we got married. And this dog, Shadow, fell in love with my dad. Like, my dad was her savior her whole life. My dad was her savior. In fact, when my dad was more medically fragile later in life, we really had to almost sit on the dog so that she wouldn't jump and scratch and hurt him. So that's what my layout is going to be covering today. And then I wanted to show you here, I'm doing the 30 days of sketches for this round, and this is day 2. And so the sketch will be in the upper corner here. And I made some frames, I cut a 1/4 inch frame out from this. It's a mix-in paper from Close to My Heart for the July through September idea book. And I didn't want to waste paper, so I went ahead and just cut from the outside edge, and then I shortened both sides of the square to make them so that they would fit on this wood grain background paper, which is also, I believe, from the mix-ins. Oh, the brown paper is actually from an old set called Yesterday and Today, or Forever Yesterday, or something like that. So I went ahead and mounted my photos with that, and then made the frames like in the sample sketch here. And this dog, Shadow, had piercing blue eyes, so I knew I wanted to incorporate this color blue, but I also knew I didn't want to overwhelm the aged photos. And Shadow was a black and white dog, and again, my dad in the chair, there's not a lot of color going on, so I really wanted to be careful on how much of that blue was in there, but again wanted to remember Shadow's eyes. So now I went into my thin cuts and I pulled out the letters for the word favorite, because like I said, my dad Shadow loved my dad, and my dad loved Shadow, but far and away my dad was Shadow's favorite person. I came in a reluctant 3rd place because I would feed her and take her for walks, but I think me being a female really worked against me. My husband worked for a long time actually and made it a game, because if you touched Shadow's tail, she would bite you. I mean, she was traumatized. She had been abused. And so he would grab her tail but not pull it or anything. And so it got to the point that, at first she would lay her teeth around his fist and put pressure to the point of white knuckles, but he got it so that they could play with it. So what I was showing you there is in the new idea book, there's the stamp set that is supposed to be, or it's set out to be used for recipe pages, but I'm going to use it in a different way. So I wanted you to see that. And then, so that's here. And I was also showing you that I glued together 2 pieces of the cardstock so that when I cut those letters out on my die cutting machine, I would have 2 layers of the cardstock already together, and you don't have to worry about putting them all together if you glue them up ahead of time. So here I'm using the Misty, and I'm using the front of it so that because I don't have the big one, I just have the standard size. So I'm inking it up with some pewter, and then I'm just doing a real slight hint of bluebird in here, and then you'll see that I'll open the Misty up and stamp it versus closing the Misty to stamp it. And then I'm just giving it some background image, and this is from that recipe card stamp set called Freshly Baked. And here I'm just going to turn it to 180 degrees so I can do the same thing top and bottom. And I clean my stamp set, and then I'm going to rearrange it here so that it can be a good background, again, noise underneath. And I thought about doing this off the edge of the papers as well, kind of having a 3rd little vignette. But I decided the 2 was good. I'll have basically these 2 in the corner with the blue, and then in the other 2 corners I'll have the branches in that. So it's kind of framing, bringing your eye into the photos, but with kind of the wood background being a little more open under or above the photos with the title, I don't think it's too overwhelming. I think sometimes when we embellish and that we can get too much that overwhelm the photos, and I need to be careful with these because they're smaller photos, they're darker photos, and I really want to just make sure that they stand out because it's an awesome memory here. And I'll play with these for a little bit, and surprisingly I don't play with them too long. I've been known to move photos 26 times before I find the exact right location for them. So here, just doing that, you know, a couple, 3, not bad at all. I just wanted to show you here on this little journaling piece, and this is from an old wonderful scrapbook workshop. But what I want to show you is with this stamp set, I inked it up in the avocado ink, but then I kind of dragged the tips of the leaves to take off some of the color, so you can see how it gives it kind of that two-tone effect. So now I'm just going to glue everything down, and as I'm doing that, I'll share with you that the little leaf vignette that I was showing you, the inking up pattern, it's from last month's National Stamping Month campaign, Hello Fabulous, and that had a stamp set, or you could get the stamp set with the thin cut, and I got the one with the thin cut, and I'm just using the leaves. I'm not using any of the flowers. So here I'm going to glue these frames down, and I just use a white glue for those because it gives you a little more grace when you're putting them down to get them flattened out. And I normally don't put glue on right over top of my project, but my desk is a mess. We have just experienced our first hurricane since we've moved to Florida. Hurricane Ian came by, and we were pretty close to it. We're on the southeast side of Orlando, and that of course is where Ian went through. Was, you know, it was the end of a hurricane category 1 when it approached us, and on the way out it was just a tropical storm, and it's still heading up to the Carolinas at this point. So I added my journaling, and now I'm using the new Close to My Heart T-square, which I absolutely love. It's magnetic, so you can put it together like this. It has the piercing holes so that you can do stitching if you wanted. I'm just trying to line up these letters, and again, these are 2 cardstock thick, so you can bump them right up against the ruler and it'll give a nice straight edge for that. So I've glued those down, and now I'm just going to continue to glue down some other things. I'm placing the leaves here, and these came from Some Assemblage Required on Etsy. So if you're interested in that, it's MK Gunn. She does a whole bunch of these things, which I think are just awesome. So here I'm just adding some shapes to these leaves that I cut out and then stamped with the avocado ink. And it's funny, at first I'm like, oh, tucking them all underneath, just, I don't like it. And then I end up putting one on top here, and it just like, oh, now I get it. Now this all works. So I'll go back through and glue these down with them in place, because I know if I pick them up, I will never get them back to this location and not be as happy as where they are. And I didn't want to add any glue onto my photo, so you saw there I just glued that one leaf down on the edge off of the photo. And when I was cutting out the title and these leaves, I also cut out some hearts. The smaller 2 size hearts came from that Hello Fabulous campaign stamp from last month, and then the bigger heart came from a notebook. Well, not a notebook, it was a note card set that sold out super quick, but it also had a heart with it. And it's funny, these hearts all nestle inside each other for size wise. They're almost perfect. So I just cut out some of those in my color scheme that I'm using here, and I'm just going to put them around the page because, you know, when you have a favorite, and like I said, Shadow just loved my dad. She could see my dad getting out of the car. Actually got to the point of recognizing my parents' car when they came over to the house, because they came over once a week for Wednesday night dinner. My dad was a kidney dialysis patient, and there was foods that he could not eat without proper preparing them, like soaking and rinsing potatoes for 24 hours. And so I would do that, and he could then have mashed potatoes that were safe for him to have. And this little heart stamp set is from the recipe, the freshly baked stamp as well. So I use that. And then here I'm just feeling like I needed a little bit more grunge or interest on this page, so I grabbed that background element stamp and the mocha ink, and I just thought it would be too dark to do first generation, so I'm stamping on the scrap paper and then going ahead and just turning it and adding some various dots along here. And then I'm also using that sheet kind of as a mask to make sure that I don't stamp on the journaling piece, and then I'll use it down here to make sure that I don't stamp on the corner of the leaves. So these are just techniques in your bag of tricks that you can pull out and use and just really help elevate any of your paper crafting projects. So now you can have a close-up of this. I really am enjoying this process of getting my photos into albums, and I hope you've enjoyed this journey. This is how you can connect with me on social media. If you have subscribed to my channel, thank you. If you want to subscribe to my channel, press that red subscribe button. Here's another video you may be interested in. Have a great day. Be a blessing.